Hello, and welcome to another episode from the desk of a Navy wife, where you may or may not hear my kiddos in the background. My name is Raina Worthy, and on this podcast, we like to dive deep into the unique challenges, triumphs, and experiences that come with being a military spouse. So kick back, relax, make that cup of coffee, or get that evening dinner ready, and just listen to me in the background. Hi everyone, I'm so excited today. I have another wonderful friend of mine and fellow milspouse. She's going to be our guest speaker and will be speaking on parenting while your spouse is on deployment. Welcome, Maya. I'm happy to have you here. Please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how long you've been a military spouse and mom.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Maya Mozee. I am currently attached to Norfolk, Virginia. My husband has been in the Navy for, I believe, just about 20 years, getting ready to make 20 years. I have been a military spouse since 2010. So what is that? We're coming up on 14 years in September. We have 3 children, so an 11-year-old, and then our twins are 6 years old. So definitely have our hands full here. I do work full time, so that's another little piece of the puzzle that adds, I guess, a separate level of stress if you want to look at it that way. Thank you for having me.
Thank you again for joining me. And of course, I love getting to know your twins. For our listeners here, she has twins. One's a boy, one's a girl. I love them, their energy. It's just amazing to be around.
To say the least.
All right. So I'm going to have some questions I'll be asking, and I would have our listeners, hear you provide those insights, experience, and tips that you have to offer to them that may be approaching deployment and also have littles. So my first question is, how did you maintain a sense of routine and stability for your children while your spouse was deployed?
Absolutely. Here is when he actually became deployed, and he was deployed for close to 9 months. So he just came back in January and left June. So however long that was, June of 2023, and came back in January of 2024. But to answer the question in terms of, just really keeping yourself on track and not letting life get the best of you during the deployments, I would say is creating a structure for yourself and your children and some type of schedule. The summers, kids are out of school, so you want to try to keep them as active as possible. And he was gone during that time. I did bite the bullet and have to put them in summer camp. It definitely was costly, but it was, to me, needed, to where they weren't just sitting at home every day waiting for me to come home from work, because I do work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. But then when school started, that helped kind of really get us back on target in terms of keeping some structure and keeping a schedule, to the point to where even when he came back, he was like, God, the kids are so structured. I had to have them on some type of structure so I wouldn't go crazy, but just making sure they know, okay, we come home, we eat dinner at this time. We do shower at this time. We do our homework at this time. Bedtime is going to be this time. Because then once they get used to that, it does help life to be a little bit easier. So it's almost like a wash, rinse, repeat type of thing, Monday through Friday. And then, you just let your hair down on the weekends a little bit and allow yourself a chance to regroup, reconnect with the kid, and, prepare to do it all over again.
I love that. And it's interesting that you said that you put them in a summer camp, because I feel like as I'm growing as a mom, routine is key.
Absolutely. You have to.
To ask a question with that, with the routine situation, would you say the summer camp made it easier for them to stay in that routine? Like, was the times the same as it would be for school?
It was very close. And so I would say, of course, everybody's situation is different, right? And your level of flexibility is going to vary depending on what you have going on. So if you are a working spouse full time, you may not have that level of flexibility as it relates to your job schedule. But I believe summer camp started at 8. So what I would do last summer, and I'm going to do kind of a little bit of the same thing this particular summer. So I would go to work an hour early and then leave, go get them from home, drop them off for summer camp. Thankfully, everything was only like within a 15-minute radius of each other. So it's very easy to drop them off at summer camp and then get back to work. and they would be there until 5 o'clock, which I mean, they could stay there until 6 o'clock. So it worked. Well, as soon as I got off at 5 o'clock, I just picked them up on my way home. And then we went home and we did our normal routine. And by it being the summer, some days we would go to the movies. Some days I would say, okay, let's go to the Y. So I was able to work out a little bit. On days that I didn't feel like working out, the YMCA had pool open. So I would take them there. They could go swimming. So just to do something, but having them in summer camp for those few weeks helped to maintain a sense of structure, to go back to answer your question, because it didn't schedule us out. And although it was just for a few weeks, I would say it definitely helped.
Yes, I'm glad that you mentioned that. I will definitely look into that for the next summer because if they had camp that started maybe like 2 weeks before school starts, I think that would be helpful with the routine setting again. All right, so my next question involves your spouse. So, what strategies did you find most effective for staying connected with your spouse and involving them in parenting decisions despite the distance?
So we definitely took advantage of the days that he actually got to call me and speak and actually hear each other's voice. And I would say we communicated for the most part. Of course, there were some times where he couldn't get emails out, but for the most part, we communicated several times throughout the week via email. And so with the time difference, usually he would send me an email, but by the time I would see it, it would be morning over here. And so he would send it to my work email and my personal email. So some days I get to work and I open my email and it's him email. And so I was able to keep him kind of up to date as far as what we were doing here at home. So he didn't feel out of the loop. And then, like I said, when he was able to call, I would try my best to make sure that he got to talk to the kids the majority of that time, because for the most part, we knew what was going on day to day with each other because of the emails, but the kids not so much. So we would make sure that he was able to talk to them when he was able to call home. And then with my oldest, he has. So, I would say, well, send daddy an email, or I'll tell Dan, hey, send Danny an email. He's waiting for your email back. So I think that kind of helped a little bit too, because Danny's a little bit old. That's my 11-year-old. So they were able to communicate that way. And then also just telling them, hey, this month we have X, Y, and Z going on. Next month is this, that, and the third. Okay. Now it's August. I'm getting ready to get the kids prepped for school. Or at one point in time, I had put the twins in swimming lessons. And so I would say, hey, we had swim lessons today. This is how it went. Send him a picture of them in the water just so he can kind of feel as close as he could to them despite the distance.
I like that because, of course, trying to involve them as much as you're able. we always have so much
Yeah.
time. Try to put everything in an email or a phone call while we can. My question now is, what support systems or resources did you rely on while your spouse was deployed, particularly in terms of managing the demands of parenting?
Ooh, the demand. Now that's a fully loaded question because it's very demanding. One thing that I noticed, that listening to you and Fantasia's conversation, she started it off by saying how important having your village is. And I cannot echo that enough. And here in Virginia, I don't have any family, and none of my family is close by. But thankfully, we are a multi-generational household. So my father-in-law lives in the house with us. So that was definitely a help, because some mornings I would have to call him, and he's older, but still drives from time to time if I need him to do anything. He still cooks and all that type of stuff. So that was definitely super helpful, because some days I would come home and I wouldn't have it in me to cook dinner. It was going to be a pizza McDonald's kind of night. And some days he would already have dinner done. That was super, super helpful. And then unfortunately, both of my parents are deceased. But I have my aunt, who's my mother's sister, and she lives out in Arizona, but she's retired. So when it came time for school to start, I brought her over to Virginia for a couple of months, actually, just so she could help me get them back in structure with school being started, school getting ready to start, and homework and cooking and stuff like that. And so having her around, I'm forever grateful, because she's come out a couple of times during the course of Dan being deployed. And it was just a great help. So definitely tapping into your village. If that means you got to buy somebody a plane ticket for them to come help you, Let me tell you, it's worth it because even the things of doing laundry, I would come home from work and I'm like, oh, let me start this laundry. And she's like, oh, it's already done. Just go do homework with them and bath, and I'll take care of everything else. So having a village, whatever that may look like for you, definitely tap into them. Also, having a very open, if you are going to work full time, having a very open and good relationship with your employer, because some people think, oh, well, they won't let me do this, or they won't let me do. You don't know until you ask. And I was very honest and upfront with my employer in terms of Dan's schedule leading up to deployment, because they have to do all the workups, and so he was in and out, in and out, in and out for several months before he actually left. And I just let them know, okay, he's doing this month. I can't travel to another site this month because he's gone. Or, okay, you want me to go out of town? Well, you're going to have to wait until my aunt is in town for me to do that. So having those conversations with everybody that you may have some type of involvement with, I think is going to help the situation as well. Once you really get into the thick of that deployment when they're gone, and then take advantage of what's going on around you in your city. If that is a summer discount to the movies, or like I mentioned, the trampoline park where they didn't care that it was a Tuesday. They were just happy to go. So definitely exploring what resources you have local to the area that you're in, tapping into your village, and then communicating with anybody that you think is going to have an impact on you and your stability during that deployment, i.e. your employer, if you're going to work or if you are working.
So glad you mentioned that, because I feel like many of us, when we move, we think, we have to start all over. We have to create this community. And it's almost like we forget that we still have friends and family that are willing. Maybe not all of us, but a majority of people that I've met have that, where they can, hey, call your aunt, call a uncle, a brother, or someone to come and
call somebody. And so many people, and to say the military spouses that may be male don't experience this, but I'm a woman, so I can only speak from a woman's perspective, the mother's perspective. You feel like, and they prepare you, all the pre-deployment meetings and all that. You got this, you got this, you got this. You're so no, I'm not that strong. I need help.
Right.
And it's okay to say, I need help. And, and even when my aunt was here, some days I would still get in the autopilot mode, because you basically do operate on autopilot of, okay, let me come home, do my laundry, make the kids dinner, da, 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 da. And she had to tell Maya, sit down. I'm here to help you. Let me help you. And sometimes that's kind of hard to deprogram yourself, especially if you know where you're leaving anyway in a couple of weeks, and it's going to go back to me just doing it all by myself. Take the help. Allow yourself a break, because even when she came last year, I was able to run over to Vegas real quick to see Usher, which that's my thing. I love to go to concerts. And it was just literally in Friday night, saw the show on Saturday. I caught the 6 a.m. flight on Sunday to make it back to be home Sunday afternoon to get them ready for school. But it was still a break. And I got to be just regular Maya and not mom Maya, and be with my friends and just say, and it's those little pockets. If somebody extends some type of help, take it, so you could take that little pocket of time for yourself, so you don't get so burnt out. You're going to be burnt out, right, but not as burnt out. The candle's going down a little bit, but Yeah.
I'm glad you started mentioning self-care. You went to a counselor, were able to still get back and do whatever it is that you needed to do, but you had fun. You were able to just be Maya. And so my next question for you is, how did you prioritize self-care and maintain your own well-being while balancing the responsibilities of parenting and coping with your spouse's absence?
It's hard. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. It's definitely hard, because naturally you're gonna put the needs of your kids before yours, right? Every day of the week, twice on Sunday. As the saying goes, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And if you are exhausted, and I'm a lady of a certain age, your body will sit you down before you think you're ready to sit down if you don't take care of it. And then, little kids, they bring home all types of germs and stuff. So if you're exhausted, you're weak, they're bringing stuff home, it's going to be easy for you to get sick, and you can't take care of yourself. You can't take care of them if you're sick. Just, if that meant, okay, we're not going to do anything next Saturday because mama's tired and I need to sleep in for a little bit, then that's what it is. If that meant, okay, I didn't do the laundry today and I have a full size washer and dryer, but you know what? I'm tired. I'm not doing it this weekend. I'll just load it all up next weekend and take it to the laundry mat and use their washing machine and dryer and finish in an hour. And like I'm joking, but that's things that I did and I still do sometimes just because I don't have it in me to clean the house this week. I'm tired. And that's okay, and you have to give yourself grace. That's the one thing I've learned as I've gotten older. And then with him being away, even before he went on the deployments, when he was doing all the workups, and you have to give yourself grace, whatever that looks like for you. If that is, maybe I'm not going to go to work today because I just don't want to go to work today and I want to be in the house and it's quiet without a whole bunch of kids running around, and I'm just going to sit here on this couch and watch TV and maybe take an afternoon nap. Okay, then do that. Again, going back to those little pockets of time, you have to carve out little pockets of time where you can, because you cannot take care of them if you are falling apart yourself.
And thank you so much for saying that, because I do, and I can attest to this too, sometimes feel guilty. You're like, "Yeah, I'm exhausted. Like, I just don't feel like it. I just don't want to
Mm-hmm.
do laundry and clean the bathrooms or something like that." Oftentimes when you're alone and you have to, like you said, just do it the next weekend or do it in a couple days.
Do it the next weekend if you can afford it, because things are stupid expensive now. But even if you can't afford it, just maybe pay somebody to come in and clean up. So what if you sitting right there on the couch watching them? Well, you know what? I didn't have it in me to do this. Thank you, ma'am or sir. Here's your money, and and you go on about your business because you feel like you have to do everything because that's just in our nature, but you're only human at the end of the day, and
Exactly.
it's only 24 hours in one day and you can only do so much.
Right. Because we're not even awake those whole 24. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
So, with that, how did you handle any feelings of isolation or loneliness while parenting the kids and yourself being deployed?
Think I ever felt alone, so to speak. I definitely missed him a lot, but I didn't feel, I mean, I guess because I have 3 kids, I never really feel alone. I'm never alone. I definitely missed him, but again, you have to give yourself grace. So if that meant I stay up a little bit later at night after they go to sleep and I look at pictures of us, I did that. Or that's when I send my emails to him late at night sometimes, because now I have a second to breathe. But I would say I tried to stay busy, but not too much, not to the point to where I made myself exhausted, but stuff with the kids. So I had put them in swim class, and then shortly before he came back from deployment, that's when basketball season started for my oldest. So we were always doing something for the most part. So that kept me occupied. But I definitely I call them my sister circle, my 4 best friends, and then also Ashley, but she in Tennessee. But leaning into my sister circle definitely helped me, because on bad days they can always make you laugh about something. Or if I needed to vent one day and just not be superwoman one day, I could pick up the phone and, all right, let me cry and get this out for 5-10 minutes, and then somebody's gonna crack a joke and I'm gonna start laughing all over again. Yeah, going back to whatever your village is for you. But I definitely leaned into them, my family. In past years, I've gone back to Michigan for Thanksgiving, and we didn't go this past year. And I said, you know what? I'm not about to drive. It's too much for me to drive with the kids. Flights are expensive. So I didn't go. But I had another family member say, okay, well, I'll come to you. And so I had my cousins come for Thanksgiving, and that was nice. And then one of my best friends, she said, okay, well, I'll come to you for New Year's. So she came and she spent New Year's with me. Having your village, your circle, and letting them in and not saying, oh, yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, when some days you're really not fine.
Right.
Let them in so they could be there for you.
And I love that you said that. Let them in, let them help you to not feel lonely. Because there are some spouses that maybe they don't have littles, or if they do, but they still feel like completely alone because it's just them and a kid, and they haven't maybe built some type of network. So my next roll of questions here is going to go back to being overseas, because that's, and this is to my listeners here, I met Maya overseas. I was able to meet her in Japan. She became kind
Yes.
of sister circle, and we had a great time in Japan, and seeing her be that mom, and it was very, something that to me was aspiring. With Maya, with you being overseas, my questions that revolve around that, my first one here is, how did you navigate those cultural differences and language barriers in that country while parenting the children?
Girl, you were right there with me. Google Translate was my best friend the whole time in Japan because Lord knows I did not learn anything, which is sad. But Google Translate, and of course, the Google Maps on our phones because we didn't know where we was driving. We was just getting in the car, going like, "Oh, it's a mall 15 minutes away. Okay, let's go try to figure out how to get there and not drive on the wrong side of the road." But yeah, so definitely exploring the city when you could. And that goes back to meeting people and not kind of being closed off. Because when I first got to Japan, I was like, okay, I don't know what this is getting ready to be like. Like, I cried when I found out we had to move to Japan. I was not expecting it to be some of the best years of my life, truthfully.
But okay, take us back.
Send me back tomorrow because I would definitely go. So I didn't know what to expect in moving to Japan. And my friends always joke that I was like the real life Whitley Gilbert off of Different World, because remember Dwayne went to Japan with Konnichiwa. And so they were like, it's going to be like when Whitley went to Japan with Dwayne for Konnichiwa. And I was like, no, it's not. It's going to suck. But it was a beautiful time, although we were there during the height of COVID. So I think that kind of put a damper on things, but just getting out and exploring, I really am happy that my kids got to experience that and just kind of live a little bit through them. Cause, something as simple as going to like Tokyo, Disney in Tokyo, everything over there, all the exhibits, everything was in Japanese. And they're like, what is this? But they still knew the songs. They still, the characters were still the same. So just really embracing where we were and trying to take in as much as we could, although COVID kind of shut us down with things that we could do there. But then also, Danny was in elementary school, so he was coming home teaching me things that they would learn at school. And I'm like, really? Like teaching me different history facts and everything. I'm like, wow, okay. So that's what I mean by kind of living vicariously through my kids too, because he would come home and teach me things that I didn't even know. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's look that up, or let's see if we can go find that. But just getting out and navigating and exploring. And that's the best piece of advice I could give anybody that's getting ready to be deployed out of the United States, is just explore it, because you may find out that it turns out to be like one of the best things that could have ever happened to you.
100%. And you know that it would feel like home before you know it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So with that, because you did mention COVID, but I wanted to know if you could share any specific challenges you face as a military spouse raising children in a foreign country, and how you overcame it.
Crazy enough, and I've heard some people say this in passing. In hindsight, COVID was a good time because it brought us together, right? We had our rules. It couldn't be more than 10 people, whatever the case may be. But we had our little crew and we had some fun times during COVID. And in hindsight, we truly made the best of it. And it's funny how you would think, my God, if I go to one more birthday party or one more whatever in this little general utility room or whatever they called it that you could rent out, I'm gonna go crazy. But then you miss it when it's gone, because it was just your sense of community. And we had good times, even, okay, let everybody meet at the park. Well, it can only be 10 of y'all at the park. Okay, well, this is our 10, and we're gonna barbecue and we're gonna have our mommy juice, and let the kids play for a couple of hours. And it was fun in hindsight. I really do miss that aspect of it. But then also, any other challenges that you may have, you just kind of got to go through 'em as you get Honestly, there's no like one size fits all type of answer. One thing I would say is very important to stay in tune with is the emotions of your kid. That was a challenge for my oldest. I didn't even realize it till one day we were talking and he's like, Mama, this is my fourth school I've been in. My baby's only in the fifth grade. And I was like, oh my God, that's a lot for a kid because now you have to keep making friends everywhere that you go. And so last year was a little bit rocky for him. I would email Dan and I said, this, and this is going on. But I would say, in terms of challenges, that was my biggest challenge. And that was here stateside. But it was because here he is having to make a new friend group. And that's hard for kids sometimes. So definitely, regardless of if you're stateside, abroad, whatever the case may be, stay locked in on your children's emotions. Because if you don't, that could really spiral more so than how you may be processing your emotions.
I'm so glad you said that because I feel like oftentimes, even if we're, like you said, caught up in our own emotions, we forget that they're also going through a lot.
And they haven't been through life enough yet to know how to process those or manage them. And so what may look like, oh, I'm just arguing with my brother and we're over here fighting over the remote control is something much deeper than that.
So this is my final question. Again, it has to do with overseas, but you can tie it into the U.S. as well. Are there any unique opportunities or experiences that arose from parenting in a different country?
I would just say in terms of opportunities, I think it's always a good idea, if possible, to try to expose your children to as many different cultures, languages, everything, traditions as possible. And being in Japan allowed us to do that. Always said and I think most parents feel this way, they want to do whatever they can do to make sure that their children grow up to be well-rounded adults and kind of know how to navigate whatever situation they might be placed in. And I'm mainly thinking about my oldest in this particular situation, being, in a new country, not knowing the language there, just being exposed to different kids from every different place. Some abroad, some from stateside, whatever, just so many different types of children. I think that was a great opportunity for him. And I think that helped to build a little bit more character for him, especially when we got back stateside. Because the States, how can I say this? The United States is maybe a little bit more aggressive than Japan. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say that. And so just in terms of, how kids interact with each other, I'm thankful for the time that he spent in Japan because he is a much more social, engaged kind of kid than I think he would have been had we just stayed in Jacksonville up until this point in life.
I could see that with my little as well. When we came back stateside, it was like, ooh,
Right. And I'm like, it's different.
Exactly. It's different.
But it's okay. Right.
Well, Maya, I want to thank you again. Those are all the questions I have for you. And thank you for being our speaker today on the Desk of a Navy Wife. Would you like to say goodbye to our listeners?
Goodbye, everybody. And remember, you are not a Superman or a Superwoman. Take whatever time you need for yourself to love on yourself and give yourself grace during these deployments. And it can't rain forever. The sunshine will come back.
Yes, it will.
Thank you all again for tuning in this week. I look forward to bringing you resources, support, and laughter. Sending my love from the Desk of a Navy Wife.